Strategic Planning Committee meeting of Montgomery County Public Schools. I am Carla Silvestre, Vice President of the board, and I'm going to go around and introduce my fellow board members, starting with Ms. Evans.
Great to see everyone.
Ms. Harris?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ms. Saluni?
Good afternoon.
And some board staff, Ms. Webb?
Greetings, friends.
And Ms. Seabrook.
Hi, good afternoon.
Let our MCPS staff introduce themselves as well. Dr. Addison.
Good afternoon.
Sharon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Mr. Landsman.
Hi, everyone.
Before we get started, if my fellow board members have any comments or edits on our meeting summary from our last committee meeting, please let me know. Any comments or edits? All right. And can I get, are we okay with the agenda? May we proceed?
So moved.
Agenda looks good. Okay. All right. So today we're very excited to present our latest draft of the strategic plan for 2021 through 24. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2022, 25. Okay. Strategic plan 2022 through 2025. And we have spent the last committee meetings reshaping our old strategic plan into a plan that is more concise and more precise in terms of the priorities for the next 3 years. So today we're going to hear about those new categories, the measures that accompany each of those categories, the community engagement process that has taken place so far, and then to hear from my fellow board members in terms of what needs to happen before this gets presented to the full board in October. So with that, I will pass it on to Ms. Ron to get started.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Do we have the slide deck to pull up? Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So as Ms. Silvestri indicated, today we're going to be presenting our update on the board strategic plan. And this work is critical to outlining what the board would like us to monitor as we are moving forward in the next 3-year cycle. And we know with the complexities behind the experiences that we've had in the last 18 months with COVID-19, how important it will be to make sure that all of our work in the district is aligned with the board strategic plan. So this visual here on the screen is just to serve as a reminder about how our current work all fits together. So again, we have our board strategic plan, the district strategic plan, which communicates the commitment to our 5 core values as a system, which are learning, relationships, respect, excellence, and equity. And we tend to refer to the strategic plan as the what. What do we want the board, what does the board want us as a district to monitor? Then beneath that, we have the how we are going to achieve the what of what is being monitored. And that we are calling the District Strategic Initiatives Implementation Plan, or in shorter form, we're calling it the DSIP. This was formally referred to as the 2.5-year plan, and we have repurposed that name to reflect its support and alignment with the strategic planning work. And this is how we're really focusing on addressing the needs among all of our students and how we are going to do that to get to our goals. And then on the bottom, what serves as the foundation of our work is the all-in equity and achievement framework. And this is how, as a system, we are closing the gaps in opportunity and achievement for all students, and will really serve as the way we are monitoring our progress and determining whether or not we are making the progress that we have set out to do as we move forward with our strategic plan. Next up, slide, please. So where we landed May 18th, the last meeting that we had as a strategic planning committee, is we discussed the 6 priority areas that are here. And then the 7th priority area that was identified by the Board of Education being student social and emotional needs. And as Ms. Silvestri noted, there was a desire to consolidate these priorities so that they are synthesized into 3 major areas. And where we landed in May 18th was to identify the strategic priority 1 as being teaching and learning, strategic priority area 2, which was around community engagement and wellness, and the 3rd strategic priority, which really focuses on organizational and operational excellence. Next slide, please. So since the May 18th meeting, a majority of the summer was spent taking those draft objectives that were identified on May 18th in priority areas and working with our community members in order to solicit stakeholder feedback on the objectives that were proposed on May 18th, as well as identify any additional objectives that may have been missed. And we did this in a variety of different ways. 1, we sent out a web-based survey to all of our key stakeholder groups that we typically engage with in order to solicit feedback. This was sent to members of 18 different stakeholder groups, which totaled 95 recipients. And the survey was open for 4 weeks in order to solicit feedback. In addition, we held multiple virtual meetings for different groups, including students, so that we could get some more information from folks around what this looked like and whether or not the objectives were ones in which they could support and any additional information that they wanted to share. We did this with higher ed partners around the district and around the state of Maryland, I should say. We also met with students, a variety of student groups. We met with some community groups, as well as some of our business partners in order to collect feedback from them as well. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at our stakeholder survey, these are all of the groups that we sent out that survey and engaged in dialogue with. So as you can see, these are the groups that we identified, and we received feedback from 72% of the stakeholder groups that were surveyed. Next slide, please. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Addison to go through the remainder of our presentation, which is really going to focus on what the feedback said and the adjustments that we made. Dr. Addison?
Thank you. And so again, the representatives and the various stakeholder groups received a link to a survey that solicited their feedback for the objectives identified for the 3 strategic priority areas that were shared with you on May 18th. And so in obtaining feedback, we sent the strategic priority areas and the associated objectives that were presented to the committee. Our communication to the survey respondents was for them to identify whether they support or do not support the stated objective. And for each strategic priority area, there was also an opportunity to provide an objective from their perspective that they thought was missing. So I will share with you the responses to the closed-ended items. And then later during the presentation, you will hear more about how we use the additional feedback of what might be missing to enhance the stated objectives. And so on this slide are the results for priority area 1, teaching and learning. You will notice that all or almost all of those who responded supported each of the stated objectives. And with regard to what might be missing in this priority area, there was limited feedback from respondents that could be translated into an objective. And so for an open-ended item, the types of feedback shared were things such as disaggregate data to create public accountability and help students recover from the learning gaps experienced during the pandemic, for example. And so there were a few responses that fit better under a different priority area. And again, you will hear more about how the feedback was used as we get further into the presentation. Next slide, please. On this slide are the results for priority area 2, community engagement and wellness. Again, there is overwhelming support for each of the stated objectives. Some of the open-ended responses shared included emphasizing two-way engagement, promoting mental health and awareness, and respectful and support to school climates for all. And so additionally, for this priority area, we received feedback on the usage of the phrasing behavior modification systems, which is in the first bullet. And so you will see later how we made an adjustment to that. Next slide, please. Similar findings for priority area 3 are observed. Overwhelming support for the stated objectives. Some of the feedback received for this priority area included statements that we had too many objectives for this area. And then some objectives might be better under priority area 2. Additionally, stakeholders shared to include culturally relevant professional development and improving school leadership recruiting as some of the things we might be missing. Next slide, please. So as Ms. Sharon stated earlier, in addition to the survey, meetings were held with various stakeholder groups. Those groups included the Family Engagement Action Team, higher education partners, business partners, and a group of students. During these meetings, the participants provided oral feedback, and at the conclusion of the meeting, they also completed the survey. And so their feedback was included in the responses that I just previewed for you. Some groups did not provide detailed feedback in a capture sheet, but for those who did, the information was organized into themes, which I will share with you next. Next slide, please. So major themes received from the meeting with higher education partners are presented on this slide. Although there were a number of participants at the meeting, not all provided a response to the open-ended or participated and wrote their themes in the capture process. In the area of teaching and learning, it was recommended to add additional subjects beyond mathematics and literacy. One of the challenges we face, though, is that we want to include a measure that impacts all students across all grade levels and has external measures associated with it, such as a state assessment. And so although we are not yet able to incorporate this feedback and make this adjustment, we continue to explore this as an option. For the second priority area, the theme that elevated was improvement on how we communicate. And this aligned with other feedback that we received from stakeholders shared on the survey. And then for the third priority area, the theme that stood out was creating an equitable plan to distribute technology resources. Next slide, please. Major themes received from the meeting with students are presented on this slide. In the area of teaching and learning, student participants shared a need to increase learning opportunities and identify some areas that were already included as part of an objective, as well as financial literacy. Additionally, in this area, some identified improving communication to students and families about opportunities they can engage in. In the second priority area, students share recommendations related to relationships between students and teachers and staff. And for the third priority area, the feedback from students align with that from other stakeholder groups, which is to increase professional development opportunities for teachers in areas such as mental health and trauma-informed care. Using feedback received either in the survey or during meetings, refinements were made to the stated objectives. And in addition to these stakeholder groups, we also met with content experts across offices to ensure accuracy of identification of phrasing and associated measures. And so next you will see how the feedback was incorporated to strengthen the draft strategic priority areas and objectives. You will also notice we adjusted the overarching priority area names. Next slide, please. So the first adjustment made is to the overarching priority area names. Here you see the proposed a draft description of that priority area and the associated district strategic initiatives from the Strategic Initiatives Implementation Plan. So the first strategic priority area name recommended is academic success, which has a focus on preparing students for career, college, and community. This priority area is supported by strategies implemented in the mitigating learning disruption, focus on most poverty impacted schools, and digital learning and support district strategic initiatives. The second priority area name recommended is culture support and collaborative engagement. Some of the feedback we received from stakeholders is the need for two-way communication, and we thought it beneficial to elevate collaborative engagement in the title. The focus here is ensuring a safe and welcoming environment and supporting mental health needs of students and staff. This priority area is supported by strategies implemented under the Wellbeing Support District Strategic Initiative. The third priority area name recommendation is professional excellence and operational excellence. And so professional excellence has a definition that overlaps much of what we in the district and all staff strive for, which is being recognized for your skills as a communicator, serving as a role model to others, recognizing your strengths and developing your weaknesses, as well as possessing the ability to adapt and continually improve. And so it fits well with this priority area, which has a focus on hiring and maintaining culturally proficient and diverse workforce, as well as ensuring effective operations to meet students' needs. And this priority area is supported by strategies implemented in the focus of most poverty impacted schools and digital learning and support for the district strategic initiatives. Next slide, please. As stated previously, feedback from stakeholders and internal content experts was used to increase clarity for the objectives identified and the associated measures. To point out a few adjustments, for the third bulleted objective, the addition of the language in the parentheses was added. So that, for example, race, ethnicity, and farms, special education, and ESOL. This is in response to the feedback received to call out specific groups. Additional clarity was added to the bullet to specify, additional clarity was also added to the bullet that specifies Maryland College and Career Readiness rates, which is in compliance with the Maryland College and Career Readiness College Completion Act of 2013. And finally, the last bullet on this slide was added as an objective based on feedback from stakeholders. For the measures identified, we continue to use aspects of the All-In Equity and Achievement Framework, such as the Evidence of Learning Framework and the Equity Accountability Model. Also included are the Maryland College and Career Readiness rates and the reporting of career and technical education, also referred to as CTE, enrollment, concentration, and completion rates. Next slide, please. For the culture support and collaborative engagement strategic priority area, we use the exact language from stakeholders to adjust the first bullet. Additionally, in response to the feedback from stakeholders about the phrasing of the second bullet, we received the more appropriate phrasing from internal content experts. And so the language of behavioral health management systems replaced the previous language of behavioral modification systems. And finally, the third bulleted objective was enhanced to include emphasis not only on culturally responsive engagement, but also two-way communication. And so some of the measures identified include feedback surveys from families, students, and staff, parent view activation, communication strategies used, and social emotional learning curriculum implementation schools. Next slide, please. For the professional excellence and operational excellence priority area, clarity was added to the first bulleted objective. More clearly, it was originally two separate objectives, but in conversation with content experts, it was recommended to refine and adjust as what is shown now as the first bullet. As mentioned previously, external stakeholders indicated there were too many objectives for this priority area and recommended reducing them. Thus, we examined what was originally included and noticed overlap in what was indicated and made adjustments. For this priority area, measures include things such as employee retention rates, feedback surveys on professional development opportunities, and conducting an inventory of professional development opportunities offered by group. And now I will turn it back over to Ms. Sharon to close out our presentation.
Next slide, please. So as we were thinking about next steps for this process, once we have gotten to the point in this conversation here where we feel comfortable with the objectives that are proposed and the priority focus areas, our idea is at the October 5th Board of Education meeting, where we would present this to the full board, is that we would share the strategic priorities, objectives, and the measures for board approval, as well as the goals that would be identified based on the baseline data. We also plan on working over the next few weeks and updating graphics, visuals, and our website for the public following board approval. So that is just kind of where we were seeing us moving forward as we are continuing this work of fleshing out our plan. So at this point, I will turn it back to Ms. Silvestri for discussion and questions.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to my board to see if they have questions or comments, and I will start with Ms. Evans.
Sure. It was great to get the feedback of the various stakeholders, so I do appreciate that. And the recommendations they made, particularly behind the one on the behavior modification systems, that name change. I was going to ask, and maybe we addressed it. I thought maybe it might have been covered. I was more interested in, the part of the survey where it wasn't 100%, but you had some people that did not support, particularly under strategic priority number 2. But I didn't know if we had addressed that through the bottom half where you did the explaining of the responses. Did I misunderstand that? So for instance, under strategic priority 2, under the second point, promote positive, caring, and supportive district and school climate respectful of all learners, we had 2.7 that did not support. I just wanted to know, was there some detail or explanation behind the areas where we had stakeholders that did not support the priority?
Sure. So in some, actually in most cases, the respondents did not provide a reasoning why they did not support it. However, in the areas of what they recommended that we might be missing, we use that to kind of enhance, but there was not specific detail on each survey that said, this is why I do not support this one.
Okay. I figured that there was a way that we kind of captured some of it, but I just wanted to know if there were specific things that people were able to say. And I didn't know if during the times when, excuse me, my voice, during the times when we were able to get with the various groups, if they had an opportunity to share that. So that was one of my main questions. But other than that, I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. You've taken this back a couple of times, Dr. Addison, to make this more succinct for us. And so I do appreciate it. And I definitely feel comfortable being able to bring this before my colleagues during during the October 5th board meeting. So thank you for all your hard work, as well as Ms. Sharon, and want to welcome Mr. Landsman. I'm making you a doctor, Mr. Landsman, in your new role. Just great to still have you, and looking forward to the work that you'll continue to do in our school system in this new position. So that's what I'll say for now.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Aluni, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I have a few. The first is about, and this is an issue that has come to the board a few times, but financial literacy. I saw in the survey data from the student group in particular that was outlined a number of times, both explicitly stated as financial literacy and also stated as wanting more content applicable to the real world taught in the classroom. So it was emphasized there, and then it was again emphasized in feedback from higher education professionals, where they asked for additional subjects beyond math and English literacy. And I didn't see that reflected in that first portion of the strategic plan. And I was wondering if there are any thoughts on that, if it can be added.
Sure. So one of the things I stated, and I probably spoke a little too fast, but one of the things that I stated was that when we are planning for our accountability of the district, we want to ensure that it reaches all students in the same way across all schools. And so with regard to other content areas, I'll start there. One of our limitations, if you will, is thinking about what an external measure might be that connects to science or literacy, and science or social studies. And so right now we know in terms of assessments from the state, it's limited. It doesn't reach all grade levels. And we do want to try to have a measure that's pre-K to 12. Additionally, when we think about the financial literacy, there is a limit right now in terms of what grade levels we reach. Not saying that this is something that could never be in our strategic plan, but these are areas that we are open to and for continuous improvement in the future to figure out, okay, how might we best fit these options into our strategic plan to ensure that it is being measured with fidelity and is the most representative way to detail that information.
Yeah, I think that's something definitely worth looking into, especially since it's reflected time and time again from so many different groups of stakeholders and multiple times. And then my second thing was going to be about, I think our school system talks a lot about increasing workforce diversity as a long-term strategic plan a lot, but something I see missing is specifically outlining what types of diversity we're looking for. So I think it's no secret that there's a lack of cultural diversity, racial diversity in our system, but also if there's a chance, maybe we can evaluate what other kinds of diversity are we lacking in all of our workforce, but especially our teaching professionals.
That's great feedback for us. And I do know that as we continue to further develop the how in terms of the implementation, these are areas that we can include in terms of ensuring that we're measuring across all of these different areas.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Ms. Harris?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to build on something that Ms. O'Looney was just discussing when it comes to what we're hearing from our students about the need for more meaningful, practical, real-world content when it comes to financial literacy and our social studies curricula. And when you were just talking, Dr. Addison, about the metrics to look at what we're doing in financial literacy, one of the things that we're hearing from students is, how can we, or we need to develop financial literacy programs that are really building in our students the capacity to be ready to step out of our K-12 education program and deal with the world that they face. So when you're talking about metrics, looking at how well the financial literacy curricula we're delivering is resonating with students and building retained knowledge. And I think we talked about this when we talked about financial literacy in several past board meetings. Even if we have a great curricula, the bulk of which we're delivering in 7th grade, is that the audience that is really attuned to the issues in ways that they're going to focus and they're going to really intentionally look to dig into and really understand that content. So looking at questions like how well our students come out of our curricula understanding what a credit score is, understanding what the average debt burden for a student leaving a 4-year degree program in a college, looking at the average debt burden for a student looking to attain career certifications to allow them to perhaps get a plumbing internship or apprenticeship, or get your CNA, CMA licensure, that kind of thing. So those kinds of practical things, I think, are things that we heard very directly from students. So is there a way that we can look to build our metric, how we're evaluating the content we're delivering and how it relates to the needs of our customers? Is there a way that we can build those kinds of measures into what we're doing?
So one of the things that I was reflecting on, Ms. Harris and Ms. O'Looney, as you both were talking, and I have heard and been observed those board meetings where we've been talking about the financial literacy piece, and I'd like to hear Dr. Addison's thoughts on this. But what I'm hearing you say is that the financial literacy component is a key component in making sure that our students are leaving us with that knowledge to be college and career ready, right? So I'm almost wondering if that can be built in when we think of the how component of how we are going to meet our objectives under objective number 1, an academic success. When we talk about increasing post-secondary education and career training opportunities for all students, is that too much of a stretch, Dr. Addison, to think that we can embed that work underneath that objective?
So it might be, but I do see an opportunity hearing how Ms. Harris framed it, because there are multiple ways to approach this. And one of the things that I'm hearing in Ms. Harris's comment is more about, do we know first, is this meeting the needs of our students, right? And so from my perspective, and I'm putting my researcher hat on big time in terms of, it really is more about an evaluation of our current process, our current implementation of our financial literacy program to first determine, is this working well and is it doing what it's intended? And then once we know that answer, then we can better determine whether or not, or how best to fit something into our strategic plan, because we wouldn't want to put the current process or the current aspects of financial literacy into our strategic plan if we learn that it's not meeting the needs or it's not meeting the objectives that we want it to. And so I think our first step then would first be to determine, how well is this financial literacy program working? And then once we have the findings from that, we can better determine how to improve the strategic plan to embed this this interest.
And one of the things I notice is, I don't know if there's a disconnect, but there may be sort of a sequencing issue in that many of our students who are raising the concerns around financial literacy came through our MCPS financial literacy curricula before it changed. So in 2018-19, we moved to the bulk of our focused financial literacy curricula moved from 6th grade to 7th grade, and then started incorporating the finance park experience for 7th graders. So many of our students who are raising the financial literacy concerns now wouldn't have had the opportunity to take advantage of that. But again, our data set around how much better perhaps the new curricula is versus the old is a little bit impacted by the fact that we had 1 year of students that all the 7th graders got through that. And then we had, 2018-19 or 2019-20. So between 2/3 and 3/4 of 7th grade of middle schools got through it. And then of course we had last year where none of the students got to go to the actual in-person finance park. So there's that kind of a consideration when we try to evaluate what we're doing now as compared to what we were doing before. And that's a challenge.
If I could just add my 2 cents as well, I do think that this is something that, if possible, is worth explicitly stating in language in the strategic plan, just because, again, it is something that was specifically called out by students often as recognized in the data you just presented, and because of the feedback that we get so often as a board. So I do think that it is worth explicitly stating.
Can I speak? I just want to say, let's take it back to the full board, because this is getting real specific and real detailed. The plan is the what, is not the how. And I'm very much in support of financial literacy. As Ms. Harris stated, we talked about it at previous board meetings about the work that's being done with our students. And so that's what my preference is. I feel like we're getting too granular with this, and this is a strategic plan. So I don't know that we have to have that specific detail in there. That's not where this belongs.
I feel like
I'm one person.
I feel like we need a category to encompass courses like financial literacy. So, in the last bullet under strategic priority number 1, which Ms. Sharon referenced, increase post-secondary education, this category, and career training opportunities for all students might be a way to include it without being so specific, because there might be other, I don't want to call them life skills, but for lack of a better word, if our students are saying we need more practical, tangible things that are going to help us once we're out of the school building, financial literacy is one of them, but there might be others. And so maybe we could put a placeholder there for some broader terminology that might include financial literacy. Ms. Webb.
And our curriculum department might have some idea of what to call it, because, I all I can think of is like career-oriented courses. So, but there might be actually language from the curriculum office that would encompass kind of all of the, because I also think of project-based learning and all of the kind of more hands-on or practical learning courses that there are.
That sounds good, Ms. Webb.
And
Yeah, I think to Dr. Addison's point, if every student doesn't have access to it, then it's hard for us to measure it, because there's only a small number of students that are actually, everyone's doing Finance Park, but if that's not sufficient, then we're asking for more than, until we build out a system-wide program, then we can't honestly measure it as a system. Ms. Harris.
Yeah, and the other question I had, and maybe this will go to Dr. Addison, looking at the data that you shared and the stakeholder engagement, one of my concerns is looking at the data collection and the sample size. And it looks like the N for most of those categories of stakeholder feedback is pretty small, given the size of our 160,000, student school system. So especially when we're looking at the number of students that participated in the stakeholder feedback, how robust are the sample sizes that we saw?
So I do want to clarify that when we sent the survey out, one of our requests for the stakeholder groups was to come together and submit one response representative of their group. And so while we sent it to multiple individuals within a group, our request or our interest was really, if you are a member of MCEA, then we want you to give a collective MCEA perspective. I will defer to John Landsman to kind of speak more to the students who were identified to participate in terms of their representativeness.
It was a good group, a good cross-section of students who attended the focus group. They represented several different organizations, different demographics, and had a pretty robust conversation as they participated in that conversation. Obviously, it was a small group, but they represented different perspectives.
How many students do we actually get in participating for the overall and did we have students at every level, or just high school or middle school, secondary students?
It was middle and high school students. And Dr. Addison, I forget how many was it?
There were
30?
I will say there were about 30
yeah,
students who participated across middle and high school.
And do we know at least that we had students from every cluster, every one of our 25 clusters?
I don't know if we have that information. We could find out. It was sent out through different organizations.
Yeah, I'd like to see a bit of that, because I think one of the challenges that we have internally in the system is missing critical feedback from various aspects of the demographics that we serve. And did we do anything intentional to make sure that we were really reaching out to students who maybe come from cultural traditions where engaging with government or organizations is a less comfortable thing, or making sure that we were making it comfortable for students who maybe don't speak, who don't come from a native English speaking tradition to participate?
Well, while we do that for many of the things that we work on, I think for this one, it was people were invited through the organizations, through the groups that they were already participating in. So it was done in English. I don't think we had it done in other languages. It was, like I said, a pretty good cross-section of students, but we didn't go to that level that you just described.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Couple of things that I wanted to point out. So I think that the purpose of the strategic plan is to really kind of paint a picture of the direction that the school system is going. And so I think that the names of the categories are important. And so I like academic success as our big overarching strategy number one. And that's a combination of some of the strategies in the previous plan that all had the same outcomes, the same measures, right? So if we were all measuring the same things, it makes sense for that to fit under one category, academic success. That's what we want the outcome to be of all of these efforts. The second category, I think it gets a little bit cumbersome and complicated with the three different words. Maybe well-being and collaborative engagement is enough. I think in an earlier meeting, we talked a little bit about engagement to what end. And so in this version, we talk about family engagement that promotes communication and empowers families to be partners with MCPS. Does that still resonate with you, colleagues, in terms of, does it fit in this category? It's kind of, I had envisioned this to be like a well-being category, but family engagement so that kids can succeed in school, right? So that to that end. Just thinking out loud here. So I guess just wanted to see where the culture in that name of that category, how do you see that played out in the objectives in number 2? And does, or is well-being and collaborative engagement sufficient?
I think that I think you can look at it in a variety of ways. I think if you have positive well-being, Ms. Silvestri, I think that if you have a good culture and a good climate, that should lead to positive well-being. So I think we can go with the well-being and collaborative engagement. I think the reason that culture and support was in there was really focusing on ensuring that when you look at that first bullet of promoting positive, caring, and supportive district and school climates respectful of student and adult learners, that culture of respect being called out specifically. I think that was the impetus to keeping that culture, support, and collaborative engagement, that culture and support item there.
And I know that the community feedback was for us to talk about two-way engagement and two-way communication. I still think that our measures don't reflect that, so that's a work in progress. A lot of the measures are outreach and improving communications, improving systems that, like parent view, right? Yeah, you need that in order to stay on top of your children's grades and communication, but that's certainly not, I think, what the community means as two-way engagement. So I just wanted to recognize that and tell my colleagues and the community that we recognize that that's where we want to go, right? This is aspirational. We're not there yet. And as we refine this process, we hope to have better measures that can better reflect that two-way engagement. But that's hard. I mean, we struggle throughout this whole process to come up with measures how do we measure if we're doing good two-way engagement? And if people have suggestions, we want to hear it. But it's a difficult question to say, okay, we're going to count this number of this and that. It's a little bit more sophisticated and complicated with that. I just wanted to recognize that the goal is two-way engagement. It's a work in progress, and that's where we want to go, and we're going to continue to work on that. On page 13, the last bullet, which is strategy number 1, sorry, I forgot about this one. Increase post-secondary education and career training opportunities for students, and that placeholder that includes financial literacy. What do we see as a measure for that? Because I don't see a measure that would tell me how we're going to increase post-secondary education, for example.
And to what you just stated in your previous response related to we continue to figure out what is the best measure. It's an aspirational aspect. The intent of this bullet is to cut across. This objective is to ensure that we're reaching all students. And so we know that there are students who are in some of our special education programs that have other opportunities. And so we continue to work with our content experts to identify what data do we have to accurately identify a measure. And so we will continue to work toward adding measures, specifically measures for that one as well.
Great, thank you. And then in objective 3, calling out the recruitment of psychologists and counselors. Is that to support the build out of the second priority, well-being? I mean, it's just so specific, right? We could also say fully staff the bus driver operators as well. I mean, just what, could you talk a little bit more about why that needs its own bullet?
Sure. Actually, we struggled with this because if you look at the bullet above, it is very similar in terms of increasing strategic recruitment strategy. And so I do think it's a great opportunity for a conversation around, do we need this specific as we have here, or kind of to what you just alluded to, does that previous bullet, is that sufficient in terms of it? Yes, we could intentionally do that, but ideally that bullet in terms of the more specific bullet could be the how, right? Like, what are we going to do to increase it, diversity of the workforce? And it could be part of that support for the well-being, which is hiring more psychologists. And so it does not need to be that specific. It actually is more in the weeds. And so we can remove that and use that as more of a supportive measure in terms of how we report out on increasing or improving our recruitment strategies.
I think it could be combined and just, add to the tail end of the previous, including the build out of our well-being program that includes counselors and psychologists. Because we are hiring more of those positions than ever before.
And also clinical social workers are another key part of the strategy. How are we looking at that kind of comprehensive group of professionals in looking at where we're trying to go strategically as a system?
Yeah, if those need to be called out, then they should be. I hate to bring this up at this stage of the game, but one thing that's very obvious to our families is the condition of their school buildings. So they walk into a building and it's dark or needs a new coat of paint. And I know we have the whole key facility indicator dashboard to tell us what needs attention when, but I'm feeling like this is maybe missing from the plan. I know community members have asked for in the past some kind of dashboard, I don't know, the thing that tells you, okay, my principal put in that the fence needs to be repaired. When is the fence going to be repaired at the school? What is that called? I'm blanking out on.
Work orders.
Work orders. Yeah, like when you submit a work order, the time that it takes for the work order to be complete.
Yeah, I wonder if my colleagues think that's something that we should strive for. I know we do not have any plans to create a work order dashboard. It's not in the works the last time I asked. I wondered if that was worth including in the plan as a thing to work towards in the next couple of years, or is that too much in the weeds as well?
I think it's a great idea. I really do, because I think Ms. Silvestri, it matters. Your lived experience of that building every day. What is it like to be in that building? And if, I think some of our buildings are provide a much more pleasant and engaging environment than others. And I mean, we all know that there are differences school to school in, do those work orders even get entered? And who's on first when it comes to entering those work orders and tracking response and following up? And I mean, I've been in many, many different schools, and, it seems like every school has its own process. But if we had a dashboard, that might help to create, a more streamlined processes school to school and fidelity across the system, and how those kinds of things that impact what it's like to be in that building or on that school site every day, what that looks like, and how we're doing the best that we can to make whatever age your school building is and whatever overall condition it's in and wherever it is in the CIPQ, make it as pleasant and functional as it can be.
And I do want to add that for our existing data dashboard, while currently outdated, maintenance work orders received and completed was something that we were monitoring and including. And so in our current dashboard, we have 3 years of data, but I recognize that's something that we do need to update. So that is something that was identified before as an area of focus for the district.
So how do you see that maybe being incorporated into the current plan?
I think we do have an opportunity under the third strategic priority area to incorporate an objective around that aspect.
Okay, thank you. Well, you mentioned graphics in the beginning of the presentation, and we had talked about creating a visual to help our community kind of digest all this information. We want everyone to read the plan thoroughly, but if you don't have time, if you could see a visual that would tell you, okay, here's the schoolhouse, and these are the pillars that is going to get us to academic success for all students. We have our, the pillar of teaching and learning. We have the pillar of an excellent and rigorous curriculum. We have the foundation, which is our amazing staff. The foundation, which is well-being, so that students are ready to acquire this learning. And the foundation of a parent community that is ready and willing to be active partners in their children's education. So our creative people are working on that, but I just like to kind of have a visual, as a visual person myself, to help people understand how all these pieces fit together so that we can get to academic success for all students.
Yes, Ms. Silvestri, we're working with, we are actively working with our graphic designers and our communications department to bring this to life. So we did already have a initial meeting last week to kind of talk about how we could structure a visual. Our hope is that on October 5th, when we share it with the full board, we'll be able to really lead with that visual in mind for feedback.
Thank you. So could you restate our next steps as we conclude today's committee meeting?
Sure. So next steps is that on October 4th, we're going to take the feedback that you gave today, and we're going to upgrade our objectives per what we heard today. And then we are going to share to the full board on October 5th, our priority areas, our objectives and our measures, as well as baseline data and goal setting, because we want to make sure that that full picture is there. And then we also are going to share the visual for how all of this fits together. And then following full board approval, we're then going to really build out our website so that we have a great public facing documents, et cetera, so that we can really make sure that this is clear for everyone.
And in terms of the work of the committee going forward, we can take time each committee meeting to get an update on where we are on each of these priority areas. So you can say, all right, how much time has passed. Let's do a deep dive into objective 2. What are the measures? Are the measures working towards what our objectives are? What do we still need to work on in each of these priority areas? One thing that I didn't mention, which is in strategic objective number 3, is the whole alignment between our budget and our plan. So if our plan is charting the direction, the funding needs to be aligned with the plan. And this is an aspirational goal. We don't have a system that can tell us our budget by functional areas, but we have put it into objective number 3 so that we can continue to work on aligning our funding behind our strategic priorities in a way that as laid out in the plan. Any final comments or questions before we conclude? Ms. Harris?
I would just like to make this one observation. When we're doing our strategic work, and when we looked at the stakeholder input that was received on the kind of draft priorities that we'd set forward, I'm concerned that one of the communities that we're missing in that input and in that engagement are the communities that are more likely to have students who we serve less well. And we know that we have an influx of newcomer students, and we know year in and year out that those students are those least likely to actually complete their trajectory in our K-12 educational program, whatever their entry point is and whatever their end point would be. They're the least likely to get to that destination. And same with our ever ESOL students are those who year in and year out, when we look at the data, do less well on standard measures of math and literacy, even though they appear to be doing well in the classroom. So what can we do to make sure that we are really, really focusing intentionally in a really culturally sensitive and safe way to engage those communities, to figure out how we can better serve them and their needs, so that we don't see those deficits in our how we're serving our school community going forward.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Harris. And just to respond to that, and I think that's the ongoing work when we think about our district strategic initiatives implementation plan. That's the ongoing work. That's the how. For instance, we know we need to get all of our children to this end goal of being college and career ready. That is the district goal. But how we're doing that and getting into that nitty gritty with our communities that we may not have served the best in the past, that's where they need to be involved in those conversations in order to help us craft the how we're going to get there. And that's that ongoing work that we're engaging in as we continue to build this out.
And to add on to that, I think it also elevates our interest for the second strategic priority area, which is that two-way communication, right? And so improving our ability to reach all communities. And so it aligns well with our interest of what we're trying to do. So we have to improve in that area.
Thank you for that comment. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a great conversation, and I look forward to making the final adjustments and bringing this to the full board in October. Thanks again, and this concludes the meeting for strategic planning today. Take care.
Thank you.